666.
A ton has happened, Richard, in the previous few weeks and months, really, in the airline industry in Saudi Arabia and the region. Just wanted to do a little bit of a rundown. You and I are both in the rundown mood here. Talk a little bit about it with you. The big thing happening, I think, if you were to say the big thing happening for Saudi Arabia's airspace, is they're launching a new airline, RIA, R-I-A. And we don't need to talk about it now, but that is basically being positioned to compete with Qatar and Emirates. They're looking for sort of a flagship carrier that does international travel, connects, makes Riyadh or Jeddah a nice connection point if you're going east or west. We don't really know a lot about that. There's been a lot of reporting on it, $100 billion, I believe, of investment into it, but they're going to unveil all of that in a month or so, and we're going to tackle it then. So I'll just leave that there. It's not just the new airline, though. Major airport expansions as well in the kingdom. Of course, what was once ranked, as one of the worst airports in the world in Jeddah, now looks brand new and is completely different. There are also new airports being built across the country and renovations in almost every airport in Saudi Arabia. So they're really committed to that. And they have plans to do the same thing with Riyadh as well, the capital city of Saudi Arabia. So investment in new airline, investment in airports. In the region, there was also a serious détente between United Airlines and Emirates. The two signed a historic commercial agreement this week that will enhance each airline's network. United, along with Delta and American, have spent years railing against the so-called ME3, Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar, maybe the ME4 soon with Riyadh, for being hugely subsidized by the government and creating sort of an unfair pricing situation. And then, Richard, the reason why I chose this week is because Boeing released its 2022 Commercial Market Outlook report, where the manufacturer states that the Middle Eastern region's aircraft fleet is projected to more than double by 2041. And that's not that long. It's 15 years, 16 years. So that's a pretty short window to double the size of aircraft in just the region. You also have the World Cup coming to Qatar, which Richard will be flying tomorrow, actually, Qatar Airlines. And so there's like a ton of activity going in and out of Qatar this, coming fall. And then Qatar Airlines was in the news this last week, really since our last episode. France-based Airbus, in a rare order cancellation, confirmed last week that it had removed 19 Qatar Airways A350s from the backlog. So there's just a ton of deals going on and a lot of moving and shaking in the space. But really the takeaway here is that what's happening in the region is we're actually seeing traction on the region and Saudi Arabia in particular's effort to sort of follow through on their promise to be the gateway between East and West. I mean, more than 20 years ago, if you wanted to fly to Singapore or China, you almost certainly did it through Europe. You would go through Frankfurt or Paris, and then you'd connect and go over. Now, more and more, you're flying through Doha, you're flying through, you could fly through Riyadh, you could fly through the UAE. So they're actually really following through on their push to do that. And all of this sort of adds up to one of the other major things they're doing with Vision 2030, which is driving to the hoop on tourism, I should say. They really, really want inbound tourists. They are investing in domestic tourism. They also want people not just to fly through and connect the continents, but actually stay and visit Saudi Arabia. So I don't know if there is a takeaway here, but there's just so much going on. And I thought I might try to wrestle into one package. So just interesting. There's a lot going on. So I'm excited to see the new airline, Richard, which looks pretty cool. But we'll save that talk for later.
It will. I don't know. I've been saying just RIA, but maybe it is RIA. I don't know.
Maybe it will be RIA. Yeah.
I'm gathered they're going to start more regional and local. I mean, I think that their first purchases will be 737 Maxes, which is awesome for Boeing. And you're right, this sector is just hard to keep track on. And Dubai really has the corner on transit as well as other things. In terms of the region, it doesn't have the corner, but it's a big leader. I just think, I love the topic. And I remember that Boeing commercial sort of update that they do. We actually did a segment previously on their 2021, maybe.
Yep.
And it's always very informative. I'm always delighted. We're homers. We want U.S. corporates to do well. And actually Boeing is making it a little in terms of revenue. I mean, the Boeing revenue, I guess, 12 months ending June was 60 billion, which is actually a little decline. But to be honest, this is, their last normal year. So Boeing's last normal year was 2018. This was before COVID-19 and 737 MAX was grounded. And they delivered 806 jets. I mean, in 2021, they delivered 340. They're not going to get back to 806 jets, before 2024 or 2025. But it's good to see them getting back to health. It's good to see them back into play and past these very significant crises, because it's a U.S. corporate, and it's something we want to see succeed in the region. The thing that I like about this topic, Lucien, and I think is an excellent topic, is that you use the term traction, and I think it's hard to understand or see where something is headed right at the beginning. Let me rephrase that. With so many things about Saudi Arabia, the surprise factor or the disbelief factor works against you understanding the bigger picture. So, for example, tourism. And, when they come out and say, we want 100 million tourists by 2030, the first response is, cut it out. You can't even drink. You're not even, you couldn't even get in the country 2 years ago. This is, when they first announced these things. Why do you even say these things? It's so unrealistic. And then as you get into it, so this is 2016, we're 6 years later, and you start seeing the traction. And with the traction, in my opinion, you start seeing the rationale. And you go, okay, tourism. Why? And then you realize, and this is according to World Travel and Tourism Council, that, travel and tourism, direct, indirect, and other impacts accounted for 1 in 4 of all new jobs created in the world. 10.3% of all jobs, 333 million, and 10.3% of global GDP, equivalent to $9.6 trillion.
Wow.
In 2019. And meanwhile, associated with that, international visitor spending amounted to $1.8 trillion in 2019, 6.8% of total exports. So you go, okay, that makes sense. And then when you say traction, it looks like they're actually getting some traction. And then you go to aviation, and in 2018, aviation, $3.5 trillion in global GDP, supported 87.7 million jobs around the world. And in 2018, in the Middle East, 3.4 million jobs with 213 billion US dollars in GDP and 4% of global passengers. All that to say, you put these together and you go, okay, all right, I'm past the first. I get past the shock of going, Saudi Arabia really wants tourists to come see their country. All right, shocking. Then you go, all right, so now they're putting in place not only some very attractive places to visit, not only regulations and visa access that make it easy to get there, plus some really fascinating accommodations with development either in place and ongoing on the Red Sea, for example, and promised for other fascinating places like Abha and the southwest. Obviously, Al Ula and Hijra are already in place. So now I want to go to Saudi Arabia. I can get to Saudi Arabia, and all of a sudden this all looks very possible. And then when it all starts to look possible, you go back to the beginning. It's going to create jobs. It's going to create a whole new industrial ecosystem for aviation and tourism. Technical skill is going to be created. A whole new generation of trained Saudis in terms of hospitality and other things are going to result. And I guess that's what I mean when you said traction. That all sort of clicked in for me. They're actually getting traction on this, and it's fascinating to watch.
It is fascinating to watch. I think that was just really well said. I mean, when you were just saying that, I was thinking, also, and you have mentioned it, but it's not when it was announced, hey, we're trying to get 100 million visitors, your first thought goes to, wait, where? To Riyadh or Jeddah? Where do you want these visitors to go? And then so fast forward here, we're 5 years, 6 years in Vision 2030, almost 7 years in. Um, Riyadh is a completely different city, completely different.
Hmm.
Has entertainment, different seasons they have going on. I mean, live music, sports, a bunch of other stuff going on. I mean, things that would actually attract you to go to Riyadh. Same thing with Jeddah, other cities across Saudi. And then you have all of these new sort of heritage sites that have been discovered and then not just discovered, but then sort of revealed as very important to human history. So there's that. And now you go from asking somebody random, you probably haven't been to Saudi, have you? To have you been to Saudi yet? Because there's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's unlike any other place I've been. So, check it out. And that's how a place becomes an attractive destination. And then, you think about it, they actually got this sort of micro level with it. They started hiring travel influencers, which got a lot of backlash. But, if you search Al Ula on Instagram, you've got all of these travel influencers with 1 million followers, more than that, on a paid trip by the Saudi government going to Al Ula and to, the Red Sea and, taking really glamorous photos and all this stuff. And, all you have now is a whole new view of Saudi Arabia. This is quite the, distillation from the discussion of aviation, but it is all connected, as you said. And it's just, this is the game plan, getting the traction as we talked about. I mean, I guess I don't have any more to add. It's
Well,
cool
no,
to see, and we got 8 more years until Vision 2030.
and
So
they seem to be paying attention to the whole ecosystem. They're not just spending money on airports in Riyadh and your favorite Jeddah, and Dammam, but also regional airports. Are being spruced up or built across the country. The interface, the user interface is so much better. You now are much more likely to be met with a professional, and very possibly a woman, the moment you come through customs and do your visa. And then when and the hospitality industry is staffing up, trying to train up, trying to get better, and the government is supporting it every step of the way. So, but again, I just think it's notable that way back when somebody said these are industries, tourism and aviation, that are not only lucrative, but they do what we want, which is they bring skills, they teach skills, they create jobs, and we should go very hard at them. And this is how we should go at them. And 6 years on, 6+ years on, you're seeing the fruits of that decision and the fruits of the commitment and the discipline to keep going at it.
yeah, and I just want to conclude this segment, Richard. We've both had really great experiences with Saudi Airlines. It's not, Saudia. It's not maybe a brand you would, associate with being the very sexiest of the Middle East carriers, but they really run a very excellent airline. And, we've taken the Dulles to Riyadh flight several times at least, and it's always just been on time, very professionally run. Just I can't, I honestly, like, I have a beef against every single airline I've ever flown on, just, because of volume. At some point, United or American has really, made one of my trips through my history, unpleasant. But I've never had that with Saudia. It's just very professional. And so, Ria will compete a little bit with Saudia, and Saudia's role might change a little bit, but they're sort of an unsung airline. And we've always appreciated the way we've been treated by Saudia. We've always walked off the flight saying, and that was great. That's
And
awesome.
just as a point counterpoint, which I agree with you, Lucian, there's plenty of stuff, but we're not. I don't think we're typical travelers. We sort of anticipate and expect things to go wrong. And
Sure.
having travels from Saudi Arabia starting in the 80s, when Pan Am was a thing, uh, I've been on a bad, there's been a number of situations with Saudi that are not ideal. And they aren't disruptive to me because, again, you sort of, as a traveler, you sort of anticipate problems. But I spent 15 hours sleeping in the Riyadh airport because there was no, because of multiple entry issues and connecting flights and this sort of thing. There's a bench in the old Riyadh airport with my name on it and my butt imprint on it.
I think we
Um,
have a future one big thing for you during a
no,
slow week. I want to get all of those stories out of you
no,
from
but
traveling way back
the,
in the
the
day.
point being is, you know, it's just much better than it used to be. And they're striving for, higher standards and best practices. And it's something that they're very motivated to do. It wasn't always the case, and there wasn't always the incentives to do it. And so Saudi has had its problems. I think it's getting better, and the RIA or whatever it's going to be, will be another thing. It's all pretty exciting.